Good morning. Good morning. How the devil are you doing this fine day? It looks like my system is doing that thing that it does every once in a while. I can see there are plenty of people watching. No chat coming through as yet. Hopefully that will refresh itself in the not too distant future. Just while that's sorting itself out, just want to very quickly check my WhatsApp group because I've had a picture here from Peter McKenna. I'm not sure why he sent that to me, but thank you very much indeed, Peter. How is everyone today? Just a very quick heads up about today's show. We've got the usual stuff and nonsense of video content and chat and everything else. I will tell you in advance, though, our morning monologue today, or should I say my morning monologue today, quite serious and quite somber. And it touches on the subject of mental health and suicide. It is a work of fiction. I sat down and wrote it yesterday afternoon, having felt inspired. But as I say, warning you in advance, it is quite a serious one. Still no chat coming through. As I say, lots of people clearly tuning in over here on the usual chat, over on Instagram as well. Who have we got over there? Bionic Shane, great name. Who wears a red hat in his avatar, which is what I'm doing. Have to admit, before I come online, I've got a little image of myself down here, and I could see myself in a red hat, and it looked horribly like a MAGA hat. Make America Great Again. I didn't think America was that bad in the first place, to be perfectly honest with you. I almost changed my hat because I don't want to be associated with that whole nonsense, but in the end, I changed my mind. Massimo D'Ambrosio just joined us over on Instagram. Good morning to you as well. There we are. The chat has just arrived. Andy Thornton has just arrived over on YouTube. Morning, Andy. How are you doing, my friend? Hope you're fit and well. We are owed a chat, but we'll do that in the very near future, I'm sure. A very quick reminder before I do press the button. We are now in the countdown. Obviously got today's show, tomorrow, Friday, and then I've got a week next week, and then I'm off for basically a fortnight, and there we are. People are starting to arrive. Dan Cullen says morning. He was actually here at some ungodly hour this morning, like 5:58. Jonathan Duras is here as well, and Andy Thornton, possibly in disguise, he's now watching over on LinkedIn as well as YouTube. It's good for our viewer numbers. Watch on as many platforms as you see fit. Not a problem at all. Anyway, it is that time. Now I'm going to say. Just bear with me 1 second. I need to check a thing because I don't actually know if I've done this. Let's have a look. No, I'm going to have to type it in. So, yeah, without further ado, let me roll the intro, post the question of the day, and get this show on the road. Yeah, I had to manually add the question of the day today because I forgot to do it. One of those things, you go to press the button, you think, I've not done that. I've not configured that. Mark Whiting is here as well. Good morning, Mark. And Ken Hatcher, back to proper weather. He had a bit of a downpour yesterday. We had a couple yesterday, funnily enough. Didn't affect me because I was sat indoors. But yeah, we had a couple of absolute torrential downpours yesterday, which just what the garden needed, I think. Anyway, it is Wednesday, the 16th of July. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition, the Lord High Chancellor of Livestream. Good morning, everyone. In today's show, XCMG's Chinese Giant. And I'll tell you in advance, this thing is moving 60 tons with every bucket load. Yeah. We have tales of cats and ducks. You'll see. We've got a Hyundai wheel load up, which is keeping a plant moving. And as our thoughts turn to summer, Venieri is cleaning up our beaches, and we're very grateful to them as well. I'm going to say very quick good morning to Jim Turner. Good morning, Jim, and to Lee Upton. Morning, Lee. How are you doing, my friend? Good to see you both here. As I said, we do have a morning monologue today. It is a little more serious than our usual old stuff and nonsense. It's called The Silent Surrender. It's about mental health and stuff. If that is in any way triggering, disinteresting, boring to you, listen, please feel free to duck out. I wouldn't want to ruin your morning, but if you do want to listen into that, as I say, it's a work of fiction, but inspired by real events. That's what they say on the TV, and I'm going with it. Please stick around for the end of the show. Yes, I think I can actually remind you of the question of the day. I'm pretty sure I can. So this is what our question of the day actually looks like. Yeah, our question of the day today comes once again kind of from our resident quizmaster, Mr. Gary Muirhead. I've actually taken one of his questions and modified it slightly, but we'll still give him credit anyway. The question is quite simply this. In the event of a zombie apocalypse, which I don't know about you, seems more and more likely with each passing day, where are you going and what are you doing? I've given this some thought over the years, and I used to think, get myself a nice penthouse apartment somewhere. You know, they'll be empty, won't they, because people have been eaten. Get myself a nice penthouse apartment so I've got a panoramic view of all that's around me. I can see the zombie hordes coming and I can make preparations accordingly. But I'm going actually for, need to find myself an island or a little spit of land accessible only by boat. I've not studied the subject enough, but I'm fairly sure zombies aren't great sailors or swimmers, so I think that would help. Also, somewhere I could grow my own food, forage a bit, feed myself. I'd also like access to a crossbow with a lot of bolts. I know a gun would probably be more efficient, but it would also attract a lot of attention. So, yes, I want a little island all to myself with some food and a crossbow. What about you? What are you doing in the event of a zombie apocalypse? While you're mulling that over, we're going to start the show properly with this. Well, now listen, never mind zombie apocalypse. Never mind all that. It's all nonsense and just something to keep you amused. Far more importantly is this. A certain Mr. Andy Darvell has just rejoined the group. Good morning to you, Andy. How are you doing, my friend? We still have your button standing by here. There you are. The Darvell, Andy Darvell. Not seen you for a long while. I know you've been active online and doing your things, but good to have you back in our midst, Andy. How are you doing, my friend? Love to hear from you. Dan Cullen is taking no chances with the zombie apocalypse. I'd buy landmines, guns, slingshot. I'm guessing that's a machine gun as well. Yeah, taking no chances. Any idea where you'd go? I'm thinking like a nice little remote Scottish island, something like that. That's what I'm going for. Anyway, it is time to start the show properly. We're going to China, basically. XCMG has unveiled its latest beast, and it really is a beast. I can't remember if it says it in the video, but I can tell you this machine will shift 60 tons per bucket load. 60 tons. And this is how it does it. Well, that came out rather abruptly. But it was the full video. I don't remember it ending like that. I did actually download that a day or two ago. Ken Hatcher says, XCMG, we've got a demo day tomorrow. I won't be. I was going, but I'm too busy in work. Unfortunately, I kind of had it triggered in my diary as well, but it's actually my wife's birthday tomorrow. So that is off the cards. What do we got? Dan Khan saying, wow, that's an animal. And there's Andy Darwell saying, big old lump that. After a while, I'd get bored and relentless, but cool at the same time. I totally agree. And I do want to say a very quick good morning to, where is he? There he is, Paul McHale. Haven't seen you for a while, Paul. Good of you to join us. How you doing, my friend? Good of you to be here. Loads and loads of stuff to get through yet. Jonathan Duras, that's an impressive heavyweight machine. I believe it's their largest. It is their largest at the moment. You never know with XCMG. I was actually speaking to one of the UK guys just a day or two ago, and they kind of keep me informed of what they're up to, by and large. But every once in a while, something like that comes out of left field, and they hadn't told me about it at all. Dan Cullen, are you available Saturday, Mark? Dan, I am not. It is my wife's birthday tomorrow. It is my eldest daughter's birthday the day after. So Saturday is going to be a bit of a party day for us, I'm afraid. So I'm out. But if you do go along and meet up with Mick, please give him my regards. We've got loads more to do here. Where are we? Oh, yes. Cats and ducks. In just a moment.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
Now, under normal circumstances, cats and ducks would be very, very poor bedfellows, would not get on at all. But what if the duck was a cat? Just take a look. Andy Darvell says, good access to the engine, hydraulic areas on the cat duck. And then he says, bloody predictive text, because he actually said the car duck. We all know what you meant. Ender, good morning, Ender, who's just said XCMG excavators are top tier in China. They absolutely are. They're top tier elsewhere as well, gaining traction. I think they're now the fourth biggest. I think they were the third biggest equipment manufacturer in the world, but I think they got overtaken. Well, I can't remember who by, but they are the fourth biggest manufacturer in the world, and they are making inroads the world over. Going back to our question of the day, which is, what would you do in the event of a zombie apocalypse? I'll come back to that in a second. Paul McHale says, if it's not a cat, it's a dog. I've seen that picture before. Yes, going back to the question of the day, what would you do in the event of a zombie apocalypse? And Andy Darvell, who has clearly given this quite a bit of thought, he said he'd have a big houseboat on a large lake with water processing ability, shed loads of tin food, especially beans and sausages, good fishing rods, and a small tender to go hunting for meat. You kind of had me at fishing rods, to be perfectly honest. I kind of like to think that's how my life would pan out. There's a zombie apocalypse taking over the world, and I'd be sat there just watching a float, hoping for that shy bite that you sometimes get. That would be me. It would carry on without me. OG says, any big contract news coming up? Not on this show. What I can tell you is I know Erith have just picked up a massive job. Where did that go? I had that a moment ago. No, can't. Bear with me a second. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, Westminster Council has advanced. What is it? Huguenot House, 1960s tower block, will be demolished and make way for mixed-use scheme featuring new flats, a cinema, hotel, offices, and redesigned public realm, which is in Westminster. And I think the whole thing is worth millions. I can't remember how much it was worth, and I can't see it now, but it's just off. It's just between Leicester Square and Piccadilly Circus. So congratulations to it's Altius Real Estate and Erith. Altius are the client, obviously, and they're doing the development work, and Erith will be doing the demolition. So congratulations to them. Going back to Paul McHale's comment about if it's not a cat, it's a dog. He then says me, driving a Hyundai Reach. Who are you with at the moment, Paul? Let us know. Nothing wrong with the Hyundai High Reach, I always think. Let's have a look. Going back here, what do we got next? Funnily enough, see, we don't just throw this together. This is all planned. We're going Hyundai next. Not a High Reach, actually, a wheel loader. Back after this.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
Yeah, we're off to the US of A. Makes my red hat look even more appropriate. Yeah, we're off to the US of A to see a wheel loader in action. So sit back and enjoy this for the next 2 minutes and 56 seconds. I'll see you in just a moment.
My name is Scott Mayberry. I'm the Vice President of Kinstra, Illinois Concrete Division. We manufacture ready-mix concrete and we deliver it. We deliver it to state projects, commercial projects, residential. We serve everybody in the community. We do have the best quality. We put more money into our concrete. We put more money into our trucks. We do a bunch of preventive maintenance. We put more money into our loaders. We try to do everything top notch. This plant is just kind of centered in a really good spot. We've got a great group of drivers down here. We've got a great plant that runs very smooth. We've got a great loader that puts all the material up. Everything down here has been very dependable.
Dexterity of the Hyundai, you can load flatbeds with the blocks. It has enough sensitivity on the joysticks where when I hook a block by myself, it's right there. It's, you know, has that easy touch to it.
A lot of plants will have conveyors that feed the belt. We do not. This plant here is set up where it's 100% loaded and charged by a loader. The bins hold about 35 yards worth of concrete, you know, and we'll do out of here 600 to 800 yards pretty much every day. So it's extremely critical that our loader is very dependable.
If you don't have a loader that has enough power, it's not going to work out for you. It's hard to always twist around and look behind you. So having that nice monitor there when I hit in reverse, making sure there's no other trucks in the yard, behind me, it's one of those things that's nice to have eyes in the back of your head pretty much.
Safety is our #1 deal before anything else.
Well, greasing it's a breeze. The sight valves for all the fluids and all that stuff is real easy. It has an electronic hood, makes my life a lot easier.
The bucket size is perfect. We also need something that can push up the piles, that can run all day long. Because we're loading very, very fast. We go through a lot of the material very quickly. So the loader's gotta be big enough to keep up with it. This is the perfect size of a loader to run this kind of a plant. Downtime, again, with a loader in the middle of a big day is horrible. We've not had any downtime. It's been very, very dependable.
For somebody like me, running a loader all day long, if it's not comfortable, you're not gonna wanna do it every day.
You put their whole package together, the fuel economy, the power, the dependability, user friendliness, you put all that together, it just makes the perfect right machine for our ready mix operation. So Van Keppel has been incredible to work with. Mark has been incredible. Mark answers every call. If he doesn't answer, he calls right back. He's also somebody that tells he's going to do something and he does it. I've had in the past, we've used a few different vendors for our loaders and have not had near the responses I have out of what I get out of Mark and Van Keppel. For Kinstra right now, who's been around for a very long, long time, every decision we make is a long-term decision. We never make short-term decisions, and this was the right decision for Kinstra.
A couple of bits from Dan here. Says hopefully the loaders are better than their machines. I'm assuming he means the excavators. Going back to our friend OG, who was asking about contracts, Dan says loads of big contracts coming up in London. There certainly are. Dan also says this, XCMG are meant to be a good machine, and you missed my comment on one. Must get a go on one, and I'm just going to scan back to see what that previous comment was. There it is. Dan says the XCMG 350 is meant to be some piece of kit. I know someone who has one, well chuffed power-wise. And going back to our friend Paul McHale, who says he's actually up with JBV Group. My mate Mark Bryan, one of the good guys, good people to work for. He's up at Sellafield Nuclear Processing Facility. Enjoy. Andy says, I missed most of that video. I was putting a shutter in. I'll tell you what, tell me when you're about to do that, and I'll tread water. I'll wait for you. It's not a problem. Ken Hatcher says, Hyundai seem to age quickly. I know the feeling. Anybody else seen that? Love to hear from you about it. Let me get rid of that because we've got more to do. Let's have a look. What have we got coming up? Oh yeah, we're off to the beach in a second. And in about a week and a half's time. So back after this. In about 10 days' time, I will be on a cruise ship heading for places like Naples, Napoli, or Sicily, loads of other places as well. And I sincerely hope that Venieri got there before I did. Not to put out their beach towels and claim all the sunbeds, but to do a bit of a clean-up for me. Yeah, good couple of comments on that. Jonathan Dura says, do love the look of the Venieri backhoe loaders. So do I. So do I. It's one of those that I always go and visit at exhibitions. But they're here now as well. Was it Conagry down in Cornwall or Devon or thereabouts are now importing them? Ken Hatcher says, didn't Case used to badge them years ago? I haven't thought about that for a long, long time. And when you said it, was like, do you know, I think they did. I can't actually remember, but it feels like, yes, they did. I'm not entirely sure, but it feels like, yes, they did. After another Italian holiday, hopefully, I'm assuming that's Venieri, will take you around their factory. I'd love to go to the Venieri factory, particularly given where it's located. And I'm doing this completely from memory. I think they are sort of equidistant from the Vespa factory and the Lamborghini factory. They're down that part of the world. So yes, I'd love to go and pay them a visit. Have any other brands made an articulating backhoe? Yes, they have. Didn't Cat have one back in the day? I may have made that up. Andy Darvell says, easiest thing to level, Walter. That reminds me of that old joke about the Irishman. Sorry, Dan, the Irishman who took up water skiing but couldn't find a lake with a slope on it. You get the idea. Chris Ford says the Dynaho. Sounds like one of my old girlfriends. Was the first articulated loader that I can remember. Well remembered. Jim Turner, going back to question of the day, what would you do in the event of a zombie apocalypse? If I was in a rush, I'd put a load on containers around a large tree, then build a tree house so I'd have a vantage point and create a kill zone at the base. Man alive, this guy's giving it some thought. A kill zone at the base of the tree in case the zombies ever broke through the container wall. As for this defense, 22 LR with moderator, 12 bore, 8-shot pump, and sawn off 12 bore side by side as my sidearm. Bill hook for javelins for hand-to-hand fighting. There's quite a lot to go through there, but what I'm going to say is, if there are any zombies watching, and frankly, there could be, if there are any zombies watching, do not, under any circumstances, fuck with Jim Turner. He's well prepared, he's heavily armed, and he's ready to do battle. Dan says Hudik is the best articulated 180. I would struggle to argue with that. And I'm going to say good morning to Takashi 2057, who's just joined us over on Instagram, becoming a regular. Great to see you here. Jonathan Duras says, Hydrema rather than Hyundai do articulated backhoes a bit on the large side, mind. Yes, they do. They do. See them occasionally at Baumer's and stuff like that. Yeah, that is the end of the show. Well, that's the end of the main part of the show. I'm going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like into my somewhat serious morning monologue today. If you can't stick around for that, please stay safe. Look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. But if you do have the time and the inclination, and if you're not triggered by talk of mental health and stuff like that, then stick around, because I shall be back immediately after. Before I start, just a very quick bit of background. Over the past 6-7 weeks, not one, but two friends of mine have told me that they've recently considered taking their own lives. Now, I don't know why they told me. Maybe it's because I've been quite open about my own mental health issues. Maybe it's because I've seen suicide up close a few times. I don't know. But I mean, I guess I should be pleased that they're still here to tell the tale, first and foremost. And I guess pleased that they felt they could trust me enough to open up about it. But then a thought struck me. They hadn't reached out to me at the time they were actually thinking about ending it all. They chose instead to suffer in silence, which I think is, part of the deal when it comes to severe mental health issues and ultimately suicide. So today's morning monologue is called The Silent Surrender. It's the snowball effect. That's what it is. It starts with one small thing, insignificant, but it grows in size, in speed, and suddenly it's too big and it's moving too fast to stop it. That's why you're sitting there, thinking the unthinkable, contemplating, replaying it all in your head, trying to make sense of something that stopped making sense weeks ago. It's hard to see. It's hard now to see how you got here. Hard to see where your life made that sudden, sharp left turn and took you down a dark, untrodden path. You've had your highs and lows, who hasn't? But this low was a new low, deeper. The first thing was the layoff. You didn't see it coming. You were unprepared. Everything at work had seemed fine. You got on well with your team. Your boss seemed pleased. In fact, you'd actually received a few commendations. So when redundancies were announced, you thought you knew you'd be safe. You were too valuable. You'd been there too long. It didn't matter. The call, when it came, was impersonal, distant. No thank you, no best of luck, no offer of career guidance. You were no longer needed, discarded. Finding work took longer than expected. The construction market was tough. There was less work to be had. Despite your experience and your expertise, no one was beating a path to your door. Every phone call ended with no. Every application met with rejection. A week without work became 2. 2 weeks became a month. A month became 3. Your wife was supportive at first. She knew how hard you'd worked. She knew it wasn't your fault. But the niggles soon began. Seeing you waiting by the phone for calls that never came. The Daily Post, rejection letters and red bills. Worst of all, the way you seemed to have given up. You both tried to protect the kids. You'd wait until they were in bed before gently laying out the debt and the depression. But they knew. They were quiet at home, quiet at dinner, quiet at the weekends. Your daughter spent more time at her friends. Your son was locked in his room, playing the guitar you'd bought him in better times. It had been a standing joke. That 20 quid that they borrowed today, paid back tomorrow, and then borrowed again the day after. But they'd stopped asking for dinners, for new shoes, for new clothes, for nights out. Then the bailiff came. A shock, but no surprise. You'd been juggling payment plans, hoping. But with no income and dwindling savings, those plans collapsed. The bailiff was passive-aggressive, calm and soft-spoken, almost sympathetic, but there was something else, unspoken, menacing. No threats, but threatening all the same. Your sleep became erratic, then rare, then impossible. A car idling in the front of your house felt like a repossession squad. Every knock, every call, every letter robbed your mind of focus. Each ring of the doorbell startled you. Each day felt like a step toward an unknown, a dark ending. You can't remember the first time you thought about it, but that one was small at first, but it got bigger, more insistent. You became a spectator in your own head, rationality fighting irrational desperation, a war of attrition. Each day a new battle, and at some point that despair began to gain momentum. Then there was the letter from the school, the one you'd found in your son's bedroom, torn in half and hidden from view. An invitation to a Battle of the Bands event in London. You didn't read it all, you didn't have to. Your eyes went straight to the bottom of the letter and the price of participation, £250. And you knew exactly why your son hadn't shown you the letter when it arrived. Your failure as a father and as a provider was heavy, suffocating, crushing. Then the lifeline, a job offer. After all this time, light at the end of the tunnel. They said all the right things. Your skills were the perfect match. And though payroll was monthly, they'd pay you weekly for the first couple of weeks. Proof of goodwill, recognition of your situation. You were always a hard worker, but now you were unstoppable, a force of nature. First on site and last to leave. A one-man suggestion box, constantly offering ways to improve things. You'd already drawn up a list of who you were going to pay first. You'd already figured out a new payment plan. You'd mentally set aside the money for your son's Battle of the Bands trip. Then Friday came. Even working like a man possessed, you had one eye on the gate, waiting for your boss, and most importantly, waiting for your money. Morning came and went, then lunch. Home time arrived with no boss, no money. You called. No answer. Called again, left a message. Nothing. Called from your wife's phone, and he answered, flustered, apologised, said he'd been held up, promised to get you your money on Monday. But during the weekend, your brain was already working overtime, casting doubt, focusing on the most negative possible outcome. When he failed to show on Monday, you weren't even surprised. But you felt like something broke. Like the narrow thread that had kept you tethered to reality had just snapped. Telling your wife you'd worked for a week for nothing was easier than expected. She just nodded, like she'd seen it coming too. Then this morning, while you were at an interview for yet another job rejection, she'd left. You came home to find the car gone, the children gone, their clothes gone, the suitcase you'd used on your last family holiday, gone. There was no note, no message. The house is empty, echoing to the sound of your footsteps and your breathing. Quite how and why you'd accumulated so many painkillers was a mystery. Packet after packet, each with strict guidelines on maximum dosage. All those packets now empty on the kitchen counter. Their contents now a sizable pile of tablets and capsules beside them. The whiskey wasn't your first choice. You were hoping to find a bottle of vodka with which to wash down the painkillers. But that was gone. Maybe your wife had been self-medicating. So now it's just you, some pills and a bottle of scotch. That's all that stands between you and some respite, some peace for your brain. You've thought about leaving a note, but what would you say? Who would you say it to? And so you sit and stare at the bottle and at the pills. Afternoon becomes evening. Evening becomes night. Sunset becomes sunrise. And you're still here. Just. At least for now. There you are. Told you it was quite serious, didn't I? Sorry, my screen's just gone completely mental. Let's go over here. What do we got here? One comment. While Jim Turner was holed up in a tree with his own private armory, Chris Ford, if you can't beat them, join them. Or a small island. Well done, Chris. Yeah. So, yes. All, I'm just going back to that morning monologue. Literally, within the last 6 weeks or so, I spoke to an old mate of mine who I knew had been through the ringer a bit. Business had failed and various other bits and pieces, but I didn't realise quite how close he'd got. And then a day or two ago, I spoke to another mate, and he said he thought about the same thing. Now, I don't know, is that a sign of our increasing openness about all things mental health related? Am I now seen as some kind of agony aunt, agony uncle, perhaps, with a beard? I genuinely don't know. And listen, it may just be coincidence that two people went through the thing at roughly the same time. But it's going on. This, part of this whole mental health drive is this notion of you never know what's going on in somebody's life or inside their head or whatever it might be, and it is. Having seen it up close, it is absolutely true. You genuinely don't. And certainly in the case of my old business partner, what was going on in his head did not match what was going on in the real world. He got himself, I don't know, in a cycle of depression, and it sounds really trite to say it, but he had lost the plot. I mean, literally, the world was going in this direction, and he was gradually going off in a completely different one. Andy Thornton says, very poignant, Mark, thank you. More construction workers die by suicide than from falls. The industry builds cities, but buries pain. It's time we laid foundations for mines, not just buildings. There's half a dozen headlines in that alone. But you're absolutely right. I mean, I think the latest figures are 500 plus suicides a year. I realise there is some question mark over whether we can claim that they are all as a result of working in construction. I don't actually think that matters. I don't actually think it matters. I think what matters is the fact that the UK construction and demolition industry is losing more than 500 of its workers per year to suicide. Whether that's been caused by the industry, the workload, the job insecurity, the pay insecurity, bullying at work, or whether it's been caused by drug and alcohol abuse, domestic situation, childhood abuse, whatever the fuck is causing it, the fact remains that we are losing 500 plus, predominantly of our young male workers, each and every year. And even if you look at this from a completely mercenary point of view, we were talking yesterday about the fact that we have this skill shortage, and we're refusing to make changes to our training regime to get more people on board. We're refusing to reach out to schools to get more people on board, but we're also refusing to change the work situation that is causing some people, 500 plus a year, to take the ultimate way out. Chris Ford says, "Fuck me, that was a bit dark for a Wednesday." Yeah, it was. Listen, we talk about a lot of stuff here. One of the other things that made me want to do that is, and I did check the calendar. As far as I can tell, there are no mental health awareness days today or tomorrow or the day after. And this goes back to my belief that this is a problem that needs to be talked about daily, not once a year, not when an organisation decrees that today is the day that we will talk about our mental health. It needs to be talked about every day. Because if you're thinking about 500 plus people killing themselves, within the construction industry, when you talk about actual work days, we're all working somewhere around about the 220 days a week, 220 days a year. So in terms of work days, we are losing roughly 2 men per day. And I realise the averages don't work out like that, but 2 per day. So that could be 2 today, 2 tomorrow, 2 Friday, 2 Monday, 2 Tuesday. So I don't think it's one of those things that we can save up and bottle up and worry about it just once or twice a year. As I say, when an organisation decides that today is the day to talk about it, it's one of those things that needs to be talked about on a daily basis. And going back to the 2 friends that had called me, they called me, as I say, after they made it past they'd been to the brink and then stepped back again, and they were telling me about it sometime afterwards. But they couldn't wait for the next mental health awareness day. They couldn't wait for the next mental health first aider person to arrive on the site or the office that they were working in. Their problem arose between times, and that, frankly, is one of the reasons we need to keep talking about it. I mean, to the point where, genuinely, I keep thinking about how to change and improve this show. And one of the things that you tend to do, obviously, you'll know that my background is in magazines. There is a thing within magazines called signposting, and signposting basically means that you signpost, so you have maybe an opinion piece at the beginning of the magazine, and it's always there. Then you'll have a news section near the beginning, that's always there. But then you'll have something on, I don't know, features, maybe gossip. All of these things have their own place. And I do wonder, I don't think I'm the person to do it, but I do wonder if we could signpost a piece of this show purely for that very, very important consideration. Maybe not daily, but certainly on a weekly or a monthly basis, just as a reminder, as a reminder to anybody that's watching this or listening to this or watching on catch up, that it is beatable. You can step back from the brink, and I mean, only one of the 2, in fairness, but one of the guys that I was speaking to actually said it's kind of given him a new clarity, having got as close as he did, and then stepping back. He said he was shocked at just how close he had got, and that shock has kind of almost like sort of a jump start, like a defibrillator, restarted his brain. And Jesus, you're going to do that? Look at what you've got. Look at your family. Look at your health. Look at everything else that's going on. You clearly got your head up your arse at the time you were doing that. Reappraise, take a look at what you've actually got. And he said, that's exactly what he's done. And almost living for the day, it's almost given him a new lease of life. Dreadful that he had to get to that point to get the new lease of life, but if that's what it's done, maybe not such a bad thing. And he says it's time to redesign support, not just tick HSE boxes, but provide training to managers, to triage to workers, and effective policies to organisations embedded into work culture and new legislation. I agree with all of that, but I think the biggest change is none of those things. None of those things. When you think, listen, I wrote that monologue based on, people I've spoken to and things that I've heard and things that I've seen and various other odds and ends. And I personally believe that one of the key drivers of the mental health pandemic within the demolition and construction industry is our working practices. And I realise if you've been watching this show for any length of time, you'll be bored with hearing me say what those working practices are. But you are often forced to work away from your home, your family, your friends, your support network. You can't visit your GP because you're away working. So if you are feeling bad, you've got no one to turn to. Men do bottle things up, regardless of what we're told not to do that. There is a temptation, if you're working away for extended periods of time, to seek solace in drugs and alcohol. I think even if you're not working away from home, there is a constant fear these days in this industry of whether your job is secure, of whether you will be paid the money that you're owed. I just think there's kind of I said it at the very beginning of that piece. It is a snowball effect. I think job insecurity is a worry. It is a worry, but taken alone, maybe you'd be okay with that. But job insecurity, financial insecurity, you're working away from home, you're not sure, how your children are, what your wife's up to, probably nothing. But again, if you're working away for an extended period of time, your mind does start to play tricks on you. You phone and expect to speak to your wife. She's not there. Where is she? Who's she with? What is she doing? And all of that. And I know when I had my wobble, tiny things became huge things. I even remember at one point I found myself sat in a car. I wasn't suicidal by any means. Too much of a coward for that. But I was sat there, just in desperation, and there was a part of my brain saying, "You'll get over it. It's not that big a deal. It's bad, but you'll get past this." But there was another part of my brain was saying, no, things will never be the same again. That's it. You may as well just call it a day. And that part of my brain was winning. Dan Kahn says, it's sad that's happening. A problem is a lot of men don't want to be seen as not a man and a wuss. It's unbelievable. Yeah. And again, I mean, there's a little bit of me that I wouldn't say I took pride in it. But there was a bit of me that was, even pleased is not the word, but there was something, the fact that two people took me into their confidence and said that they'd really had a bad time. They were okay now, but they'd had a bad time, and they felt like they could open up to me. I thought that was in some ways a good thing. I wish they hadn't had to get to that situation in the first place in order to open up. But, as I say, I took something out of that. But isn't it crazy? But particularly when you think about some of the things. Listen, I've worked on and off sites and stuff. When you think about some of the things that men do talk about, sometimes pretty lewd and crude, and they'll tell you some pretty unpleasant things. They're quite happy to share their bathroom habits and their bedroom habits and stuff like that. All very, very personal things. And then something as personal as that's considered too much. That's a discussion too far. I mean, men are weird things. Men are weird creatures. And, I've given up trying to make, I've given up trying to make sense of it. I know that the standing joke is you don't understand women. I think I actually understand women better than I understand men. I don't understand women at all, but I think I understand them better than I understand men. It's a problem, as for years men were seen as strong to stand up to anything. We refuse to accept the problem. What people are going through by saying get over it and get to work. Yeah. And again, I mean, I mentioned it in that, this battle of the bands idea, when you let your children down. I've told you this story before. We endured quite a bit of time. Me and my wife had quite a bit of time with some pretty serious financial issues. They were related to my business, but they were not of my making. Let's put it like that. That's probably the easiest way to explain it. And my youngest daughter, Courtney, all of my kids used to take school dinners. And I came down getting ready to go to work one morning and found her making a sandwich, which, I mean, she's not a big eater anyway. She's clearly not supplementing her dinner. What's going on? So I said, well, why are you making a sandwich? And she sort of gulped a bit and said, well, you haven't paid for our school lunches, and I didn't like to ask. I know you got money problems. And I sent her on her way, gave her the dinner money and everything else. But that, like the Battle of the Bands thing, a tiny thing. I hadn't paid for their school dinners, but it was literally. I mean, it would have hurt me less if she'd run up and kicked me in the balls. Because, as Dan rightly said there, what is your role as the man of the house? I realise we live in a more modern world, a more enlightened world, but I was raised, I'm sure most of you were as well, that the man of the house was the breadwinner. He went to work, and sometimes the wife went to work as well, but by and large, you were the provider. You were the guy that put food on the table. And the very fact that I hadn't put food on the table was, I felt like I was dealing with the actual financial situation itself, because I had that under control. I could see a way out, and I was working towards it. I was working harder, but that one came out of left field and really caught me unawares, and that really did knock me into a spiral for a good few days. That Jim Turner says, I don't think anyone's forced to work away from home. It's a choice. Often means to an end to earn extra money for a better life or early retirement. I don't agree with that, actually. When you think about, particularly when you think about some parts of the country, if you're in a part of the country, off the top of my head, maybe the northeast of England, maybe Scotland, maybe Cornwall, where work is not quite as easy to come by. And if you find yourself laid off, and the way to make ends meet is to accept that job 150, 200 miles away, beyond commuting distance, what choice have you got? Do you sit there and say, well, I won't pay my bills for the next 6 weeks until somebody offers me a job within a 20-minute commute, or do you take the job that's on offer? Chris Ford, you've been as close to it as me. Neither you or I had any idea what the person concerned was thinking at the time. Also, that it's bloody hard to get them to uncover their true feelings, unfortunately. Yeah. That's one that really sticks with me. I mean, I've told you before, the guy that I used to work with who did take his own life, he was probably bipolar. Probably. I mean, he was never diagnosed, at least as far as I was aware. But he was. His moods were black or white. He was either, cheery and life and soul, or silent. He went silent a few times in the run up to actually killing himself. But at no point, at no point did I think that's how we will end up. That will be the outcome. It was just a case that he'd gone quiet before. This time he'd gone quiet for a bit longer, But that was the only clue. And to be honest, it was only when he did actually take his own life that myself and the people that we worked with all went, maybe we should have seen, rather than a day or two bad mood, that had been like 2 weeks of silence. Maybe we should have seen that. Dan says, and we talked to no one on site of any problems as you're seen as weak. What? How ridiculous is that? And I realise that all stems back to that, macho image and stuff. But I have to say, I'm at the point now, maybe I've been reading up on this sort of stuff too much. I am actually quite admiring of people now that show a degree of emotion. I quite enjoy a good cry. I'd rather it was for something joyful. But yeah, I don't mind a good cry. And somebody will stand up and actually say, I've got issues. There's a bit of me that thinks that took some bollocks. That really did take some balls. That much more than look at me, I'm invincible. That wouldn't impress me at all. What's her name? Shania Twain. That don't impress me much. But somebody actually opening up about their feelings and their problems and their struggles, much, much more. Jim says, I think people nowadays always want more because they've got such lavish lifestyles on social media. Jealousy drags them down. I don't think that helps. Years ago, people lived next door to other folk that either worked at the place or earned similar amount of money, so the jealousy didn't get a chance to drag them down. Really good point. Yeah, really good point. I listen. I mean, I kind of graduated into adulthood at the height of yuppidom. Where you were a nobody if you didn't have a Porsche and a property portfolio and so on down the line. So, yeah, I mean, I came up through those ranks, as it were. I'm not entirely sure I ever bought into it, although the very fact that my midlife crisis was marked with the purchase of the very Porsche that I'd wanted when yuppidom was at its height, maybe it had more of an effect on me than I thought. But, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Andy says this is not restricted to the construction industry. Certainly not. The MOD have developed many good strategies that could be transferable. I accept it's isolating, but a lot more can be done to reframing mindsets. I also wonder about that very thing, about reframing mindsets. And I think perhaps easier to do at management level, things to look out for. But I know when I had my my slippery slope, I don't recall thinking I was on a slippery slope until I was at the bottom of the slippery slope. There was nothing in my head said, you are aware where you're going, right? You do realize where we're going here. It was only when I got there that I thought, shit. I remember the destination, the end of the journey. I have no recollection of the journey itself. My wife reckons it took months. There was a slow accumulation of things that gradually, and maybe that was it. When you've got a friend who loses quite a bit of weight, if you see them every day, you don't notice it. If you don't see them for 3 months and you see them again, it's like, Jesus Christ, where did you go? That was my thing with mental health. It wasn't I woke up one day and thought, oh, fucking hell, I'm depressed. It was just a slow erosion of my mental well-being to the point where I just woke up one day and thought, the best thing for me is to go away in a car on my own with no actual destination and then sit there for a damn good cry. That was, as I say, don't remember the journey at all. What do we got here? Chris Ford says, it's not only men. I know 2 women who took the permanent solution to a temporary problem. It's sad to say I've known more people that took their own lives that have been killed in car accidents. Mine's about 50-50, funnily enough. But yeah, I take your point. I do take your point. And listen, we talk about that in construction and obviously within the military as well, because the figures will be skewed there. Suicide is a big killer among men, particularly among young men. And, I do think one of the reasons that we have such a poor track record in the demolition construction industry is because, frankly, it is an almost entirely male industry. There are claims that we're at 14% female in the workforce, but by 86% of the workforce is male. If young males are more prone to mental health and suicide, then that will skew the figures quite a bit. Jim says, yes, you take the job working away, but only until the local one turns up, but folk get comfortable with the extra money. Then that wage becomes the norm and the circle starts. There's absolutely a degree of that. But I'm also of the mind that, I wrote this from an employment, a financial, and then ultimately a domestic situation standpoint. But there are other triggers. One of the triggers that sent me over the edge, or two of the triggers. The one, I think, if I were to really chart it back, my best friend dying in a motorcycle accident took my legs out from under me. If you think about mental health in the way that you think about physical health, that one incident severely undermined my immunity, my mental immunity. So then my dad was taken ill and diagnosed with cancer, incurable. And I was already in a weakened state. My immunity had been compromised. So that hit me harder than perhaps it should. And then my son went away to university. And, I'm very close with my kids. And that felt like another blow. And then obviously we had the financial issue. So mine was actually the other way around. Mine, the finance was like the last straw that broke the camel's back. But not all of this is definitely financial. And one of the things I didn't factor into all of that is your working conditions and the people that you're working with. If you're spending 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 hours a day with people who are thoroughly unpleasant and quite possibly bullying you as well and abusing you, that will add to it. And again, Jim's absolutely right. You could put up with that until you find something better, but you've still got to put up with it for a while. And it has an impact. Jonathan Dura said, should never be ashamed of showing emotions, especially with stuff like this. No, I agree. As I say, I don't know how we convinced ourselves that the way to prove that you're a man is to, never bat an eyelid, never shed a tear. These are little things, and I'm fairly sure I wrote about this a while back. I went to an event within the demolition industry, and there was a guy there that I hadn't seen for probably 2-3 years. And when I arrived, he wasn't content with a handshake. He was literally holding me by the shoulders, how pleased he was to see me and, how great it was to catch up. And when I was leaving, he ran up and he gave me a hug. Not, he wasn't coming on to me. I'm nowhere near attractive enough, and he is straight, happily married. But it was one of those, it was like he really was genuinely pleased to see me. And I actually came away thinking, why do we not do that more often? My wife goes out with her old schoolmates, once a month, and they hug and kiss each other all over the shop. Men don't. If I promise you, if any of you, Dan, Andy, Chris, Jim, if ever I see you and I give you a hug, don't worry, I don't fancy you. You're definitely not my type. I just think, we need to forget the macho nonsense, because frankly, look where it's got us. Look where it's got us. We, in demolition, construction, in the military, we have got a spiraling crisis of mental health from being macho. Well, fuck that. I'd rather be seen as a big old pussy but still be here with my wife and kids. Dan says, never forced to work away, but I chose to as more opportunities. Yeah, and again, I mean, forced is the wrong word, I think. But if you are, and I know what I was like. I mean, I've told you this before. One of the things that I regret quite a lot, I went freelance the year that I got married. A year later, I was a father. A year after that, I was a father of 3 because we had twins. And a year after that, I was father of 4. At the same time, all of that was going on. Interest rates were about 15%. So my what had started out as a relatively cheap house and cheap mortgage was costing me a fortune. And I just basically, fine, I'll just work harder. I'll work longer hours. I'll work away. I'll do whatever it takes. So I missed sports days. The one that they don't remember it. I've asked them. They don't remember it. Of course they don't. But my twins' first birthday, they had a birthday party in the garden. You know, all the family, all the friends, bouncy castle for the older kids, and you know, a clown and all of the stuff. Where was I? I was at a rental exhibition in America. Talk about get your priorities arse about face. And bearing in mind, this was at a time when I was being paid a wage. It wasn't like I'd secured a big contract to fly halfway around the world and do a job. I was being paid a wage. I didn't earn any more by traveling to America, but it seemed like the thing to do for my career and for my family. Skewed. I wouldn't do it again. Andy says, you're absolutely right, Mark. Depression is usually recognised by the individual after the event, how low they got. Well, mark me as Joe Average then, because that's exactly me. That's exactly me. And even things like, I've said before when I've been talking about this, I now recognise some of my triggers, but also some of the warning signs that I am headed down that path. And one of the things that I look out for is isolation. You know, finding good excuses to go and spend some time alone, not to spend time with the wife, not to spend time with the kids, not to meet up with people, just to kind of find a way to tuck myself away and stuff like that. And when that happens, you know, having been there and done that, I now know, are you doing that because you're just being lazy or unsociable, or are you doing it because we're going that way again? And that is usually enough. That's usually enough for me to pull back and go, no, fuck it, I'll go and do the thing. I don't particularly want to, but I'll go and do the thing. And you get through it, you know. But yeah, I'm at the situation now. I mean, is there a mental health or a depression equivalent of sobriety? You know, these people that say, you know, I'm 2 years sober or I'm 3 years sober. I'm 5 years. 5 years largely undepressed. There's been a wobble, you know, if comparing depression with alcoholism. There are a couple of times where the bottle's been there, but I haven't opened it. You know, so is there an equivalent? Should there be? I don't know. If anybody's got any idea on that, please let me know. But that will do us for today. I think I've probably dragged you down quite enough, and you know, it is a serious subject, and I don't want to dwell on it because, you know, I'll be back tomorrow with more of the same, hopefully with something a little bit more upbeat to send you into your Thursday afternoon with a big grin on your face. Until then, everybody, have a fantastic day. Really enjoyed your company, enjoyed your insights as well. Thank you for all of your input. I'll see you tomorrow. Have a good day, regardless of what we've just been discussing. I'll see you all soon. Cheers.